Hi everyone, if you're looking for a cool, retro, futuristic, secret agents in the 80s, and I'm a child of the 80s, so it really talks to me. We're talking classic neon vibe, totally rad, coolness. If you're into that, then you are going to love Street Wolves. Savage World, one of the best games today. Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support. Please subscribe. I'm trying to get to a milestone so I can have a live stream to celebrate, because I like to celebrate with live streams. But it's not about me today. It's really not about me. Why are we here? We're here to talk to Paul Vincent, creator, author, layout man, chief cook, bottle washer for Street Wolves, which is a very cool Savage World setting, which I've talked about on the channel in the past. But I wanted to have him on because he's got something cool coming up. I'll let him explain all about it. But hey, welcome to the channel. I appreciate having you. Let folks know who you are. Tell them all about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me this space. I really appreciate it. I like your videos and your music and everything.
Yes.
I like your intro's cool. And I was really grateful when you covered Street Wolves. Was it something like last year when it came out? And now we're here again. Or I actually get to talk to you in person, which is cool. But I am Paul, or Paul Vincent, or PV. I just never really settled on a name in the TTRPG space. But I am basically a creator. I do all the writing for right now. I'm probably going to have other people doing writing as we grow. I do the layout, like the design stuff. And, sometimes I do artistic things, so I wouldn't call myself an artist. It's like photo bashing type stuff. So just taking different elements and creating something new. And then, like I do art direction with our artists. But anyway, so I'm based out of Milwaukee. I
No way.
cats.
I did not know that. I've literally
lived... you didn't know that?
No, I live just outside of Milwaukee. So
oh, that'd been hilarious if you're like next door.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, so I'm a Milwaukee-based designer. So maybe we'll meet up someday in person. But yeah, I have a Kickstarter coming out for Street Wolves. It's the Street Wolves Turbo Edition. So what that is basically it's the same book, except I want to get in print. So that's the main goal. Is it lives as a PDF right now. I want to get print, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to redo the layout. So the layout's already good and people like it, but I've learned a lot and grown a lot over the year since it was published, where I want to kind of beef it up. And so this is my chance to do that. I already did it to the Jumpstart, which is free. So if you get the Jumpstart, check it out. It's been updated with the new layout, so you can kind of see what I'm going for. So that's the base goal. And then the stretch goals include more custom art. Like I said, so there's some stock art in Street Wolves, and I tried to flavor it and kind of give it, some heavy editing and whatnot to make it more fit the setting. But there's stuff that's just like I'm not entirely happy with, because it's not my vision. I'd rather pay an artist to do it the way I really want to see it. And I've worked with some great artists. I really want to give them money because they're great. So that would be like one of the major stretch goals. Then another one is we're looking at getting a couple adventures done from some guest writers. And
cool.
Yeah. Candace the Magnificent is one of them. And then another is Kristen Name. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm bad at pronouncing names, but he's the author of Titan Effect. So
wow, cool.
Familiar with that?
Yeah, I played that too. Great setting. Yep.
Yeah, he's really cool dude, and we talk a lot. And then it was just kind of like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Would you like to help me out by writing an adventure? So he's going to do it for a stretch goal. And then another stretch goal would be a plot point campaign by Vince Kaufman, who's he's a GM and AP, I don't know, actor, performer, I guess is the right term, for Black Project Gaming and Mayday Plays. He's done like a little bit of writing. I think he has a thing published with Delta Green But he's a real cool dude. He so talented and inventive and perfect for like the kind of campaign that we want to do. So that that stretch goal, we can get a whole plot point campaign out of this if we go far enough.
And
And
this calls for it. I mean, just with the vibe and the feel, having a good plot point campaign
yeah,
would be fantastic.
and his too, because generally my adventures that I write for Street Wolves are very, and we can probably get into this later, but like it's very Miami Vice crimes and gritty and all this kind of stuff. And but I keep it pretty street level. Like it's Street Wolves, there's street level crimes and whatnot that they're investigating. But the plot point campaign would be like a globe spanning thing. So it'd be a much bigger adventure, like our series of adventures. Like it just, I just imagine it like we talked a little bit about it, just like kind of building and building and being like a real big threat kind of a thing. So it's really exciting because I've run Street Wolves for a while just with my home group, and I still haven't really gotten beyond like the low level managers of the syndicates and crime bosses and
Yeah.
stuff. So
that's a good segue into tell everybody of so we're talking like we know it, right? I know Street
mhm.
Wolves. I've read it. It's really cool. There's some cool stuff we'll talk about. But why don't you give people a real strong flavor of the setting? You know, uh, I talked about the '80s vibe. Tell us about Street Wolves as far as the setting goes and the feeling and the flavor and um, the cool elements of
Yeah.
it.
So the complicated explanation is it's a synthwave infused neo noir retro futuristic action adventure. But what that really means is it's this, investigative action setting that can be a bit moody, that takes place it starts in 1987, so the back half of the 80s. Tech is a little bit ahead of where it actually was. So there's some 90s bleed, like things that, they were experimenting with in the 90s with VR is like super popular in Street Wolves. It's just retro things like kind of flavorful where there's like pagers, but you could actually send emojis and like messages through these pagers. So nothing like super cutting edge. It's still bulky tech. There's really no like wireless stuff, like you have to like jack into everything.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, it's very influenced by the look and feel, if you've ever seen synthwave music, where it's got the really saturated colors and the person in the leather jacket looking into like a weird sunset that's all cut out kind of a look. They're usually standing by a cool car. So some people think it's like kind of confuse it with cyberpunk, but cyberpunk is like a dystopia where technology has gone amok and life stinks, whereas synthwave is more like it's still bright and hopeful, but there's things under the surface that are ready to bubble up. Like technology still hasn't crushed us yet, but
Right.
it's gonna
Right.
it's gonna come, but it just hasn't yet. So
Very cool. Very cool. So I I love the color when you talk about like the synth wave and the colors and the saturate. It's not just flavor text, right? There's the whole I think it's called vapor, right? The whole
yes,
vapor thing, which makes cities look like that synth wave, saturated Miami Vice, you know, kind of thing. Tell us about that. That's kind of like sort of the one of the core tenets of the setting a little bit.
so yeah, so while I was writing it, like I basically looked at all this artwork from synthwave, and then I looked at like Miami Vice, and I looked at all these things, and I one of my main goals with creating the setting was like, how do I replicate that in this setting? Like, I want to keep it real and grounded, but I also want the sky to be purple and pink and stuff. How do I do that? Like, it's not fantasy. So I created this thing called Vapor, which it's a unexplained phenomena. I get to it a bit in the core book, like what it could be, sort of. It was part of like an industrial accident, maybe, but there's various cities around the globe that had like these large explosions, and the result was like this color stuff that appears at night mostly. It makes lights trail, and glow even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it explains, well, why do I see this stuff in this artwork? And then that also influences the world, because people in the world of Street Wolves adopt it as a part of culture. It's like vapor inspired vehicles, and they might start wearing cutting edge clothes, and like it just kind of like it all kind of feeds into each other. And so you're probably going to ask about the powers then, right?
Sure. Tell us about the powers.
So I wanted people to be able to have powers in Street Wolves, even though that's not really my thing personally. Like, but I wanted the ability for people to have like more options when they played.
Yeah.
And since we already had this thing, well, why not just have it give people some weird side effects to this stuff? And it's not everybody, it's very few people. So there's like a hindrance where you're poisoned by it, and basically you just have to wear sunglasses everywhere because your eyes are really sensitive to light. And then those people don't have powers, though. Once you have the major hindrance, then it can light can damage your skin, so you're wearing like clothes all the time. You're kind of a little bit vampire-y,
kind of that Blade vibe.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, like I was trying to go for like that. I don't know. I've seen a lot of art where like the punks are wearing all like cool goggles and stuff. So I figured, there's probably a lot of downsides to having the powers, but there's a lot of pluses too. Like, if you have like Bolt or something, you basically have like a powerful weapon on you at all times, where somebody else has to have an Uzi or whatever. But it's all thematic. There's factions that feed into that, where the Soviets are still going strong. None of their cities have vapor, so they're really after trying to figure out what it is and how they can get it. There's a cult that's basically worships it in a way where you could end up getting kidnapped, or they might try recruiting you to join them because they love vapor powered people. They want them to be like, they just like kind of lift them up, and kind of give them whatever they want. So yeah, it all just kind of feeds into each other. And I've just had I've had players play vapor powered people, and the way they do it is like they don't really quite understand what's happening to them, so they play it kind of like X-Men kind of a thing.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Where it's just like, why are these blasts coming out of my hands? I don't get it, kind of a thing. So,
why me?
yeah, exactly. Why is there a cult after me?
Yeah, what did I do? I'm not trying to do anything. So, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And in character creation, you really lean heavily into, like, you even recommend that come up with your own soundtrack that, as part of character. So it's really interesting that really heavily lead into, and I think that's what I thought was awesome was, like you said, there's this, I forget the name of the power, but there's this power that is sort of the overall opponent of the agents, that's, I guess, trying to, I don't know, really take over the world or just cause havoc, whatever.
Oh, the Network of Shadows.
The Network of Shadows, thank you. So I don't remember names all that well either, but
oh no, I don't either. So I barely remember half my book, and I wrote it.
I feel like that on some of my music. It's like I can't play it anymore, even though I wrote it. So there's that kind of that grit there, but everything from a player perspective, there's like this positive spin. You have your cool outfit that is your signature. You've got your soundtrack. You've got the gadgets are all kind of get that kind of cool vibe to them, even though it's like 80s tech. It's really I really like the character creation. And when you come out the other end, you've got somebody who's not just mechanically unique, which we usually do, right? We got hindrances and edges. And so I'm interesting because I got this quirk or whatever, but you're just interesting because you're interesting. You know, you got a style to you that's different than other people's style. And it has no mechanic. Well, there's a couple spots where there's mechanical advantage. Like, for example, there's an edge called Fashion First Combat that gives you some advantages. But I mean, overall, it's flavor, but it's a flavor
Yeah.
that you really lean into. So that's pretty
Well,
cool.
yeah, and the type of people I play with like love like writing up their characters and thinking about them and stuff, and it's just kind of a way to enhance their experience where, oh, I get a playlist, and you know, thinking about what kind of music your character might listen to helps define them. Like, are they a heavy metal person or country? You know, so I feel like that just kind of deepens your character in a fun way without having to write a big bio or something of that nature. And as far as like the fashion, in a way that originally started as me getting frustrated with always asking players, because it's not as important in D&D, like, oh, what do you have on you? Because you're going in a dungeon, you just assume they've got all their like swords and all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to ask like a suspect about something, do they have their M16 with them? You know. So I'd always be like, do you have this, you know, your tactical body armor on you? You know, so if we define, you know, what your average, you know, look is, you know, I can't, and now I'm forgetting like what it's called, but trademark look. So you got your trademark look, and then you have your tactical style, and you define each of those. So like my trademark look could be I'm wearing a hoodie and a t-shirt and a baseball hat, and I have a pistol, you know, that I tuck into the back of my pants. So then that's your shorthand for like, oh, I'm going to go talk to the suspect. I'm going to be in my trademark outfit. But we're going to go raid the warehouse. I'm going to be in my tactical gear, which is the vest and the big gun and all that kind of stuff. So it was a little bit of selfish as a GM, just because I wanted that shorthand. Like, what do you have on you? I don't want you to have to list everything every time we do a scene. So,
well, and also, you know, oh, your suspect's getting away. Well, I'm going to shoot him. Wait a second. Weren't you in a corporate office building that had, you know, do you really have your big gun on you? You know, so it gets past
yeah,
that,
exactly.
that sort of thing. For sure.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit. So people like mechanics, right? The really cool thing about Savage Worlds is settings bring flavor and interesting concepts like the vapor, like the, you know, that sort of thing. Are there anything, you know, let's talk about edges. I already talked about one I thought was cool, which was Fashion First Combat. But what other, is there other interesting, what kind of things do you find in the edges that kind of, you know, like obviously in things like cyberpunk settings, you have things that let you have more cybernetics or make you get sick if you have cyber. You mentioned a little bit about the vapor and stuff like that, but tell me more about sort of the core of the edges and some of the mechanics behind that.
There's quite a few that I have that are for melee combat characters. So there's one for like throwing ninja stars, and there's one for like, it's essentially a judo one. Just because, you know, with it being in the 80s, I felt it would be lacking if there weren't martial artists and ninjas and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So I kind of tried to fill in some holes, or at least things that I thought might be holes with that whole thing. So there's like a package of those that's in there. But then there's other things like, you know, I just try to see what's in the setting and trying to reflect things like in Miami Vice and whatnot. And so it came out of like, there's Cold-Hearted, which there's a whole thing we can talk about Drive later, but it when you're cold-hearted, you don't have to take as big of a hit on Drive, or it's easier for you to pass those checks because you're cold-hearted. You can, you know, kill somebody without it affecting you as much, right? There's Into the Groove, where if you're listening to music, you get an extra action card, I believe. See, this is where it's really bad because it's been a while since I've looked at my own rules, and I let my players handle that stuff. I say what edges you're going to use, and they just do it.
I do the same thing. It's like you need to know your edges. That's your character, right? Yeah, I do the same thing.
I can focus on everything else then. But then there's like other ones where there's a couple I got from Titan Effect that are reskinned. And Christian was really cool about letting me use them. Which is one of them is like a veteran option where you do start ahead of the other characters, but it also can come with some negative side effects, like you might be known by the network of shadows because you're a veteran of the previous organization,
right.
Kind of get into it. And then I'm trying to think. Oh, there's Turncoat, where you were a member of an evil organization, but you've changed your ways and you're part of the good guys now. And so you might, have some extra information on them when you're facing that faction. You might be able to have more knowledge about their secrets. You might have some more connections and that sort of thing.
Cool. That's cool. Well, why don't we talk about Drive a little bit since you touched on it?
So yeah, Drive was really inspired by Miami Vice, or those cop shows where like you're getting too close to the edge, that kind of stuff. And they meet the bad cop and they got to take him out or whatever. So that kind of goes along with that whole thing where your character could get low on drive and then develop a major habit, which however you define it would be like drugs or whatever, or they could become a hot-headed maniac, or just the things that happen to bad cops and bad cop TV shows. So the things that can cause you to lose the points are like if you fail to stop the bad guys, if you harm innocents, but there's killing somebody, even if you have a good reason, is a drive check. So that's just one of those things where it's still going to take your toll on you because these are quote unquote real people. I know we're playing a TTRPG, but I'm trying to ground it a little bit where
right, sure.
These characters aren't just shooting every bad guy they see. Like they might want to think about it. And the whole system it's a bit reskinned from I believe it's the old horror companion sanity rules.
So it's kind of the sanity rules from back then, but not you're going crazy. You're developing a darker side to your character.
It's more like this. It's like stress, but the stress is driving you, bonkers. And there's also a thing that's attached to Drive 2 is where if you're really hurt in combat, you can basically gamble all your drive to keep fighting. So if you have a couple wounds, you can go, all right, I'll make a check and then spend your drive and, just fight through the pain. And then, at the end, you might either be dead or have zero drive because you snapped on it. But
so it's kind of, it's got that blaze of glory kind of feel, but you don't have to die at the end. You can just have this
a little bit
literal resource. Yep.
And I do say in the rules that if agent or Street Wolf goes to zero drive, that doesn't necessarily mean the loss of your character. Because everyone loves a good redemption story, maybe they go to zero and then they try to work their way back to it. And there's some mechanics in there where gaining drive is harder, gaining relationships is harder. Maybe your teammates don't trust you as much anymore, like role-playing wise. But that could be a really interesting story to tell too. So it's not like, I guess one thing it could be like is dark side in a Star Wars game, right? Like you have a character that goes to the dark side and then the GM has them. This, it's more like it's kind of up to you, the player and the GM's like, do you want to keep telling the story with this character? If not, then you can turn them over to the GM and then they can become a bad guy or whatever.
Become that evil NPC that it's like, hey, I remember that guy. That used to be me.
That was my former partner, that kind of thing.
Former partner. Yeah. Yeah, I remember back to when we were in a warehouse staking out when you stabbed me in the back, and now you're on the bad guy side. I'm gonna take you
Yeah.
out. Yeah, yeah.
So you're already playing Street Wolves.
Yep, yep. So speaking of that, so there's a lot of flavor there. So what kind of gameplay do you typically see in the when you're playing with the folks? What I mean by gameplay is Cyberpunk has a very gameplay aesthetic to it. The way you play the game. So what about Street Wolves? It's kind of hard to describe exactly what I'm digging into, but
Yeah. Well, observing it, so there's been some APs of people that have run it, and some people run it kind of over the top, neon action movie, kind of, colorful kind of vibes. Where when I run it more gritty. Like I do these like long investigation things where you're trying to put the pieces together and figure it out, and then oh no, they're over here, we gotta take care of stuff now. So again, I hate saying this all the time, but it's like Miami Vice, where the you're going to a party and trying to meet this guy to make contact with this person, or you're uncovering dirty secrets to bust some perp or something. So and the players that I play with, they generally, they really like that kind of slow burn, where that's not for every group. But what I found is that, or what I've really enjoyed finding, is that when people run it, they can run it different ways. It's not like there's only one way to run Street Wolves. If you want to be like the A-Team, you can do that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do slow burn investigations, you can, and it works. It works both ways. And, that's part of the power of Savage Worlds. I know you're the Savage Worlds GM, and, and I'm a developer for Savage Worlds third party, but there's a reason why we're here, is because it is very flexible. If you don't want all those super crunchy rules, you can run a dramatic task or quick encounter or something. And that's one thing I like about it. Sorry, I'm just going on a tangent about why Savage Worlds.
Well, we're
is
here
good
about Savage Worlds and the setting, so yeah, I mean, they're definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you're doing a setting for Savage Worlds tells us something about the kind of game that you're looking to play, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and what I like, so when I'm running it, generally there's this build up. So I go like 2-3 sessions. This might sound super boring to some people. We don't even have much combat. Maybe there might be a fist fight or just a mild thing, but it generally builds up to the big, showdown at the warehouse or whatever. I keep saying warehouse. It's the only, because I have an adventure coming up that happens to have a warehouse. So my mind just keeps circling back to that. So,
well, and I think the drive concept lends itself to, not the hothead, go in guns blazing to solve every problem, right? So it's really that investigative, trying to learn what you need to learn. So you're coming in. I mean, this, an undercover cop versus I'm busting a door down, it's definitely will play well for that, because of that fact that, you don't want to be hurting innocent people. You don't want to just, do crazy stuff. But then if you don't leverage that as much, you can do, well, even an A-Team, right? They shot 1 million bullets, but they never actually hit anybody with any of it, right? It was always equipment, barrels, whatever, right? So something blew up, but nobody got hurt.
Yeah. Oh, and what I like TV show wise too is I often do this, is I'll split the party, the old phrase, don't split the party, but you could totally do that in Savage Worlds, where one part of the party goes to investigate something, like turn over an apartment looking for clues. Well, the other party goes to rough up a suspect or something, or, engage in some other, so that way you can address the players who may want more action, and then the ones that may enjoy social encounters more, just by doing like cutting between those two scenes. Like, I love it when it's like I find a good break. Like, okay, well, cut away from this moment, just before the guy pulls out his gun, to like the social scene and back and forth.
And I think
I
that's
just
the beauty
really
of
like that.
more modern games where there's communication capability and stuff like that. You can split the party and it's not a big deal anymore. People can go do different stuff. Somebody can go research,
Yeah.
somebody can go, flip over an apartment, somebody can go back to the police station and do something, or the Street Wolves headquarters, somebody can go looking for a suspect and do some networking or something along those lines. It's a beautiful thing. And you've got the big brick phone, so you can stay in contact because it is the 80s, right? So you got that brick phone ready to go. So
well, they all got, I think a lot of them, I think so a lot of the characters, they come with like a basic package of stuff. And I believe I put the beeper in there, like the pager. So they all have their pagers and they all get like a radio so they can contact a radio. And then like I do have the bag phone, which is the classic, based on the phone that my dad used to have because he was a truck driver. So
yeah,
he had early cell phones, and it's not as convenient as today, but it's still, it's, like you're saying, like
I had one of those phones. It didn't have a battery. So I could, you have to plug it into the car lighter before you could actually use your phone. So no one could get a hold of you, but you could call somebody else if you needed to.
Well, if you watch Big Lebowski, he has one of those, but he has the battery, and the battery's like seriously like a giant brick. So yeah,
like a
he
car
just
battery.
sits there with this giant phone, and it's the car phone, but he's got its own battery. So
very cool.
I just love that stuff.
Yeah, I love the feel of it. Again, that's what got me excited. The aesthetics. I don't know if I've run into another setting that's really embraced the 80s and the style of it. I know Wise Guys, that's like a 90s kind of out in Las Vegas, 90s kind of mafia, but it doesn't embrace the 80s because it's more the 90s kind of thing. And so there's a lot of different settings, but I don't think anybody's really said, the 80s was this cool era that we kind of forget how cool it was, because all this technology was on the cusp of becoming commonplace.
Yeah.
And, the music was really good, honestly, especially if you were in you had hair bands. So,
Oh, yeah. Well, on your point about like other settings, is that the one reason why Street Wolves is the way it is was I had this idea that was kind of like a G.I. Joe knockoff. And then I was thinking about what I could publish with. And then I looked into Savage Worlds, and then I already saw that there was a G.I. Joe, reskin, essentially, Freedom Squadron. And then I looked at as many other modern settings that I could. And I was like, how can this be different so it's its own thing? And so it started becoming more of what you're, talking about, the technology and everything. And then my buddy Jason Ho, who was kind of like just giving me, he's like an art director, and he gave me all this free art directing advice. He encouraged me to lean into the synthwave thing and for the art. And then that fed into the other stuff. So yeah, eventually it originally just came from this desire of like, how do I make this different and interesting in its own thing? Because I don't want to copy anybody else that, and step on anybody's toes in the Savage Worlds community. Because, like if I made like Freedom Squadron 2, I think people would be like, what is this? You can't do this, So I'm glad that pushed me creatively. And that's one thing, like there's TTRPG creators like, oh, somebody already came up with this idea. That's good, because you still can use the core of that thing, but now it gives you opportunity to say, what can I do to make this more interesting and different from that idea?
Very cool. Yeah.
Just a free tip.
Yeah. And you definitely, the whole setting embraces, it's not a reskin by any means. I mean, there are a bunch of settings that truly are, and they're very good. Don't get me wrong. Definitely not saying they're not good, but like there's on Swag, there's So You Want to Be a Ninja Mutant Turtle. There's something that's called Sewer Samurai. Good stuff.
That's a good one.
It's good.
Yeah.
But it's definitely there was a thing I was excited about. How do I bring it to market? That excitement I had by, filing off the serial numbers. Definitely, I could see all your influences, but I don't think there was anything where it's like, that was a thing. That's a TV show exactly like that, and you just filed off the numbers. It's like a different thing, just inspired by all that. So,
yeah, I really wanted it to be its own creation and its own like IP, for lack of a better term, of like enough differences to make it its own thing without it, like, oh, this is just, you could say it's just Miami Vice with the serial numbers filed off, but then I've added so much extra to it, like with the vapor and all this stuff, that it's like, okay, I feel like I'm a little safe now from that. So
yeah, I guess when I read it, I really didn't think, I felt that as an inspiration, but I didn't feel like that was just the thing you were trying to do with the numbers kind of
mission
filed
accomplished.
Yeah, so you pulled the wool over my eyes, or whatever the right term is.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So is there anything else unique or interesting setting rules you want to cover? And then let's talk again about the Kickstarter and get everybody excited again about it. Anything else that you thought was interesting?
Yeah, there's relationships. They essentially, it's like Bonds in Delta Green, if you ever played Delta Green, where you have like friends and family, and you keep track of basically a score of what each one of them is. It's a little bit rules light. But it ties into things like leave, which I'll discuss in a minute, and your drive. So, and it's also there thematically for telling stories where, if somebody writes down that their brother is this person, and sometimes they give you a little extra, like, oh, they're CIA or something, like you can bring that character into the story. Then the players just handed you a list of 5 people that you could potentially bring into your stories in some way. And there's the leave, so it kind of goes hand in hand with leave, which replaces like downtime or what do they call in Savage Worlds? Is it downtime or?
Well, there's interludes. There's
it's when you go, when you just, it's in between missions.
Yeah, when you're just stuff. Like doing stuff. Yeah. There's downtime. Yeah. There's interludes are when you're talking about stuff and role playing between downtime. But yeah, totally get it. Yeah.
So leave gives you that opportunity to do things like do a crime or do a solo mission or help a partner, so you can help another street wolf who has low drive. You can go to therapy, so to increase your own drive. There's all these extra little things that you can do, and you can tell these little micro stories at the end of a session. Generally, like, it's really fun to kind of cap it off. We're like, okay, we just had this adventure, and then now what happens at home? And so if you have these relationships, you can easily bring them into these leave mechanics. So, I went and visited my family. We know who your family is, and then you just tell us a little story about the family you're using from your character sheet. And there we have our leave. Some players, just like I say, you can do a crime, because not all the characters in Street Wolves are goody two shoes. A lot of them have some sort of dark past or something. So there's con artists and thieves and those types that are in the organization, because Street Wolves, the organization they work for really needs anybody who's good at this kind of stuff. But a con artist might just go, okay, on leave, I'm gonna scam an old lady. I mean, that's not a very nice thing to do, but maybe the player wants to do it. And then that's roll.
What my character will do. Yeah, it's what my character would do.
Persuasion or something. Yeah, and they can make some money that way. Or there are some negative consequences to failure on some of those. But yeah, so I always love running a leave thing after we've done playing. So those are mainly the 3 drive relationships in leave that are like the add-ons. But I also have some other stuff in there, like advice on how to run a montage. So if you want to just
Oh yeah,
do
the
a quick,
montage.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you just want to do a quick shopping scene, you know, put on some music and then just kind of like go from player to player. It's really easy to do. It's fast. The emphasis on just, you know, say one thing, move to the next person, and kind of, you know, and there's all these different tables and stuff to give you inspiration on things that can happen during the montage. So, you know, like if you throw it to a player and they're having they're, you know, they just can't think of something, roll on the table, and then you can help them out. Like, oh, what about trying on silly hats? I don't know. That could be one of them, you know. I'm like, yeah, I try on silly hats, you know, whatever. But yeah,
But
and
it's
I
kind of
have
like a rapid
musical.
cut between players. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What
Yep.
are you doing? What are you doing? And it works
Yeah,
best when you put
and
music on, is what you're saying.
yeah, I have music suggestions for every type of montage I could think of. So yeah, and then I have like stuff in there that's just like tables to just help with chase complications, you know. So not really heavy mechanical stuff, just things to aid the GM to play adventures in this world, which they might not be as familiar with as, you know, you or me, who, you know, I grew up in the 80s a little bit after you, like I'm a little bit younger, but I still grew up in the 80s and it counts, and I've consumed a lot of 80s media, but I don't expect everyone to, you know, have all these things just
Oh, sure.
dig into while they're running the game. Like I gotta give them a lot of resources to help them with that. So
Very cool. Yeah, I forgot all about the montage. Yeah, that's right. That's a pretty cool little mechanic, for sure. So,
you know, and here's a big scoop. I'm working on a cut to mechanic to facilitate players getting to a meeting with a shady character without having. And I've noticed this a lot of time with my groups. It's like, okay, we're gonna go meet this shady character. All right, well, I'm gonna do all this like prep and all this work and stuff. The mechanic I'm working on is to just get us to that meeting, like in the TV show, where we cut to the characters walking through the door, and we haven't spent like an hour of table time planning the meeting. Does that make sense?
yeah. So does that include, you know, if they said, "Oh, I should have brought along my you know, I don't know, my tape measure. I don't know. I should have brought my tape measure. Does it include? Oh yeah, you probably will have that because we can make a roll that says, "Did you think of that
Yeah, I
beforehand?" or
am
something.
working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am working on that. So far, it's worked out pretty good. But you know, just because it's like it would always kill me is I want to have like a cinematic moment. It's like meet the bad guy at the bar or a potential bad guy at the bar, and it's like, okay, half hour goes by where I'm scoping the bar out and I'm doing this. So I'm hoping in a future expansion of Street Wolves to have this cut to mechanic in it. So
Cool. Yeah, I could see that being really useful because I think, unlike if you're trying to go for that TV vibe, you know, TV shows, um, things happen quick. Like, you know, 1 minute you're meeting the low level drug dealer or whatever, and next minute you're like meeting the big boss, going to do the big buy, and when it was like, there's no way in real life, you know, 1 minute you're talking to the low, and so suddenly, oh yeah, now I'm talking to the big boss with my bag of money. It's like, it's the TV shows don't waste time with the I have to spend months working up the chain in order to, you know,
yeah,
get any chance
yeah.
of it. So yeah, that's it's cool to have a mechanic that takes all that out of the mix. So very cool, very
Yeah,
cool.
and it's basically kind of like a social contract between the GM and the players. Be like, okay, we're gonna do this. It's not a, you know, it could be a trap, but I have like, you know, some stuff for that too. But it's just like, I'm not trying to trick you into getting killed here, people. We just want to have this meeting with this person.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
I recently I had an adventure where the players just, they would not, like the person brought them food to eat, and it's like, oh, this is poisoned, oh, this has got some
Oh
drugs in
yeah,
it, and they
very
just like
paranoid.
refused to eat the food because this guy's a bad guy, and it's just like, and I told them, you know, when it's all said and done, they go, was the food poisoned? No, sometimes food is just food, guys. It's like
Yeah. Well,
So
and like if you talk about like media and stuff, that they're not always in danger of getting mowed down. Like there's plenty of scenes where the bad guy walks in the room and they have a discussion and they leave. They just don't start a shootout every moment, that they're together. So
yeah, right, exactly. So all right, cool. So let's kind of close off by talking again about the Kickstarter. When is it coming out? What are some of the pledge levels? Just kind of remind everybody before we close the show off.
okay, so April 2nd, not April 1st, because I couldn't do it on April Fools. April 2nd, Kickstarter launches. It's to get Street Wolves printed and update the layout. But, all the stretch goals are the super cool things that we're really going to want. So the things like the added art. Did I mention custom music? We're going to have some custom music tracks.
Oh, cool.
Adventures, plot point campaign. There's going to be some add-ons that people might want. I have some here that I'm going to show, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
Do you mind?
This is a visual medium, so it's good.
This is a visual. So I have the Street Wolves cassette tape. So it's a cassette case, and it's a USB drive in the shape of a cassette. So you can see it comes out here. And then it's got a custom printed label, which is reversible, so you can make it the tape of pop star Kimberly Tiffany, her debut album. So if you want to have that as the outer thing, you can. Otherwise, this is the Street Wolves label. So that's one of the super cool add-ons. Oh, and it'll come with Street Wolves preloaded on it, and the music, and maybe a few other digital goodies too. I feel like this is like QVC now. I'm really sorry. So we're gonna have dice bags. These are hand sewn by my girlfriend, so I don't do everything here. I do have some help, but we got these printed off, and she's hand sewing a bunch of them. And then finally, well, this isn't the final add-on, but there's more. But the one thing that people might want is the printed Jumpstart. So this is I was at a con in Wisconsin, Platteville, where I did sell a few copies. So those are like the only ones in the wild right now, essentially. So, but this will be like the first time the printed Jumpstart will be widely available. So yeah, there's going to be lots of cool stuff. The tiers are essentially, there's an add-on tier, so you can just buy some of the stuff if you want. There's PDF level, there's the print level, and then there's like these big box full of stuff levels that are going to be pretty limited. So it comes with like basically everything. The thing I really, really, really like people to know is that if you're a previous Street Wolves purchaser, so I'm calling it like the legacy backers, if you back this Kickstarter, you get a special thanks, free NPC cards, PDF of those, and then you'll be able to print them on demand at cost, and then an adventure for free too. So like, I really want to thank people, and I don't like double dipping. So if you bought Street Wolves before, maybe you have it in PDF and now you want to get a print, you get those extra things. If you bought it just in PDF, you get those extra things. As just like a thank you for getting us this far. So
well, cool. That's great. That's great. And hand sold dice bags are a cool thing. So very nice. So
yeah, my girlfriend's a master seamstress, so she's in charge of all soft goods. So maybe we can put together something fancy in the Street Wolves costume. Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
Well, cool. All right. Paul, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this project. Street Wolves, I think is super cool. That's why I did a video on it and talked about an overview so that everybody can go back and watch that if they want to learn more about all the setting. But I think you covered it fabulously, obviously.
I think they should watch it though, and also give it a like if they haven't yet, and this video and all future and past videos.
So that's kind of like where I go, look at the bubbles, like, subscribe, do all the stuff. He means it, do that. So appreciate that. So again, thank you so much for being on. Everybody to Kickstarter. When this video drops and you see it, it may be right at the time the Kickstarter kicks off or a day after, but doesn't matter if it's up there. Take a look at it. I think PDF. I looked at the PDF level, really reasonably priced. The cool extra stuff, pretty reasonable. So I think people will be excited about it.
Yeah, and if you get the PDF and then we meet all the stretch goals, you get all that other stuff in digital form, like for like a plot point campaign and 2 adventures and stuff. That's a pretty good deal because you're like people that purchase it afterwards aren't going to get all that stuff with it. So
and that's the beauty of kickstarting, getting in on the Kickstarter, get some extra goodies for a good price. So thanks again, and everybody, we will catch you in the next video. Have a great day. Savage World, one of the